In the phylum Arthropoda, we will be discussing about the subphylum Hexapoda. The Hexapoda, what does the meaning of Hexapoda is? So the hexa means 6 and poda means the feet. So these are the arthropods which are containing 6 legs, and these 6-legged arthropods are commonly known as insects. These insects can be divided into 2 groups on the basis of if there are wings present in them or not. So they can be divided into pterygotes, which are with the wings, and aterygotes, which are without wings. So wherever the prefix a comes, that means the absence. And these are, if there are aterygotes, that means these are without wings. These include the springtails, dragonflies, cockroach, and locusts. So Hexapoda group may prove to have 10 million living species, and when the rich faunas of the tropics have been completely described. So the tropics, as we have seen, that the tropical rainforests are there is more productivity on the tropics. So the number of insects or the organisms, all the other organisms or the species diversity is much more profound in those areas. And so is the case for the insects. Insects are more in the tropics. If we have, if we study those areas and we have completely described those areas, the species, then we have 10 million living species. Up to 10 million living species can be only for these hexapods. So hexapods are having unbranched appendages, a simple gut, a single pair of antennae and pair of mandibles, and together with a toughened head capsule. So these are the different segments, and those different segments you have different appendages attached, a simple gut which is responsible for the digestion, antennae are responsible for the perception of environment, and a pair of mandible which is of course used for the chewing and crushing of the food. And insects are also having the 6 limbs. What is the oldest insect? The oldest insect is probably the springtail Rhyniella precursor from the Lower Devonian Rhynicourt of Ordovician basin of northern Scotland. So the Lower Devonian, that means the era, and Rhynicourt is the area in the Ordovician basin in the northern Scotland where we have found the fossil of this particular organism. And as the name indicates, Rhyniella precursor. Precursor is something in the Latin which is much at the beginning, which makes the other thing, that is called precursor. So, and how did the insects diversified? There have been earlier thinking that how did they diversified. We have been thinking that insect diversified rather earlier. But the studies by the Lavandiera in 2006 showed us that the insect have been diversified earlier than we think, and a group probably originated in freshwater during the late Silurian. So if anything is developed in the freshwater, the water environment is not a very good, and especially the freshwater, cannot preserve the fossils, and that explains their lack of fossil record or the poor fossil record. So freshwater origin may account for the poor fossil record of the group before the Devonian, and that was established by the Glanner et al. In 2006. So early and mid Devonian faunas are known from the Rhynie, Gaspé, Quebec, and Gilboa, New York State. So these are from the western hemisphere in the Canada and USA, and these are coincided with the diversification of the land plant. So this is important. So when did the insect diversified, the plants were diversifying as well. So that means these are two independent group of organisms, and they are having somehow some relationships as well. As we know about the pollination, and that's being discussed later. But first, there were some insect flight. So by the late Carboniferous, a very diverse insect fauna has evolved with forms such as dragonfly and mayfly, which were capable of powered flight. So the dragonfly and mayflies, these were the flies. These are the insects that were able to fly, right? And which was a very good adaptation to survive in an environment. And as we have discussed that the both insects and plants, they were being diversified at the same time, or their diversification events were coincided. At the end of Permian, there were familiar insect orders that have been appeared. So the orders that we see today or we recognize today, those were found during the end of Permian. And during late Mesozoic and Cenozoic era, there was significantly co-evolutionary relationship between the plants and insects. So insects are responsible for pollination and many the seed dispersal or other functions which they do with the plants. For example, the fig tree has a particular wasp which is responsible for its pollination. So all of these things were happening at that time, and it evolved from there. So that means the plants and the insects, they had the relationship that dates back to late Mesozoic and Cenozoic era. And not only the plants were affected by the presence of insects, there were some mammals which were affected by the presence of insects as well. During Miocene, the fossil hair trapped in the amber together with the sandfly Lutzomaya. So this is sandfly, which is Lutzomaya, and it was present in the hair, and these hairs were trapped in amber. Amber is a type of a fossil in which the plant secretions are attached to some structure, and they preserve that structure as it was today, right? So it does not let them degrade, and that's happened with the hairs. And in those hairs, we could find a sandfly. So that means these were the bloodsuckers, and these bloodsuckers were already feeding on mammals, and that was established by the Peñalver and Grimaldi in 2006. So the insects and the plants and insects are insect and the mammal, they were having living together, they were interacting, and they had their evolution together. So this was about the subphylum Hexapoda.